Good afternoon, Eugene. How are you?
I'm great, Jana. How are you today?
Great. Today we are going to be talking about something called Polycrisis, and I think this will resonate with a lot of people in Ireland because it really comes down to problem, reaction, solution, and we're seeing crisis after crisis after crisis, and this puts into perspective why it's happening and gives some examples. So I'll turn it over to you, Eugene, to kick off the Polycrisis.
Yeah, Jana. So this is the title here is Polycrisis Driving Ireland's Social Transformation, right?
Mhm.
Using the language that
Mhm.
is being used in our schools an awful lot because most of Irish children now are being educated to become agents for social
Yeah.
transformation. In case you didn't know that, but that's what's happening to children in school. So let's talk about this term polycrisis. It's kind of, I guess, one of these made up words. Here's the World Economic Forum. Where else might we find it? We're on the brink of a polycrisis. This was 2023. How worried should we be? So, a polycrisis is basically where you've got multiple things going on. You've got climate change, you've got migration, issues. Perhaps you've got housing crisis. You've got some sort of health crisis, etc. And when you multiply those together, you got what's called a polycrisis. So instead of just having one
Mhm.
big crisis like COVID-19, for example, you've got this multiple smaller crises, but they all add up to something that you have to take drastic action. Social transformation
Mhm.
is required to address the situation, right? You create it's the notion you create a crisis and then you create a response to it. Um, so it also here Project Syndicate, right? We covered Project Syndicate in a previous video, and you can see them talking about here Europe and the polycrisis, right? In Europe, so appropriate terminology coming from Project Syndicate, I think, as you see. So, and here they talk about the need of an institutional transformation. Europe needs to undergo an institutional transformation, right, to respond to the polycrisis. So you can see what's going on here, right? You using this as a lever to fundamentally change something, particularly the bring in authoritarian
Mhm.
rule, bring in our laws, things like hate speech laws or whatever it is. You use this polycrisis concept to justify doing that,
Mhm.
and you get everybody on board with it, right? So let's move on. So I guess what I'm going to do here, there was a recent analysis done of this thing called the Cloward-Piven strategy, and we'll have a link to what that is in the description. And it's these intellectuals looked at a strategy basically for how can you create social transformation within a country and do it from within by creating a number of crises across different aspects within the economy and within the social structure of the country. And somebody did an analysis of this on Facebook with regard to Canada, and we have it here on the right hand side. You'll kind of see it here. It talks about how Canada is doing. Now, as we know, Canada is one of the wokest countries on the planet. And it's very much doing a lot of these things that the guys call out in this particular strategy. So we're going to see how Ireland does against this strategy. We are farther along, I think, than we actually think, and it's kind of disturbing. And for Ireland, it's been driven very much now by sustainable development, climate change, and and the things like the effect of migration. Climate change affects
Mhm.
migration, for example, which we've loads of people migrating to the north of Europe, and we've also got inclusion, the whole area of inclusion, which is a big theme with the United Nations as well.
Mhm.
So those will kind of come up in the discussion. So let's go through how Ireland is doing, I guess. And the first thing is the first principle that these guys had was you overload and bankrupt the welfare system.
Mhm.
You create a problem within the welfare
Yeah.
system. And so Ireland aren't doing too good at the moment. We've this very high GDP, and we seem to be doing really well from that perspective. But we're running, budget deficits, and we ran a very big budget deficit during COVID, and it increased our borrowing significantly. So the amount of money the debt per capita in Ireland is number 7 globally. And we might want to bring in, 1 million migrants to change that number, because that would change the per
Mhm.
capita number.
Mhm.
But it would only make the situation worse,
Mhm.
obviously, ultimately. Ireland isn't as healthy financially as we think we are. And here we have the government has their debt declines by 2.5 billion in 2024. And you might think, oh, that's actually sounds like good. That's positive. We reduced the debt by 2.5 billion. But we had a surplus of 23.4 billion, and 13 billion came from Apple, right? The windfall. We got the 13 billion windfall. So how come we only reduced the debt by 2.5 billion when we had a surplus of over 23 billion? So does something happen there,
Yeah.
Janet? There's something gone wrong there, right? I would have thought we would have used a lot of that money, particularly the 13 billion windfall, should have gone off the national debt,
Someone's cooking the books.
but it hasn't. Well, obviously money put into capital projects, into other things wouldn't be included. So, but there's a problem. And the frown on the finance minister's face there is probably indicative of, I think, the frown we should all have on our face, because there's something wrong going on here. So let's move on. And here, the government spending this year, we're 2 billion over budget this year in 2025. Like, that's the latest number. This is a slightly old headline. We're actually 2 billion over. So where's that money gone to? What are we spending it on?
It's a good one to follow regarding some of the egregious misspending by the government with our tax money is Nick Delahanty. He's done some good dives into everything from the
100%.
bike shed to the immigration scam, the Slumdog Millionaire. He had a few million hits on that one. So Nick Delahanty is a great one to follow regarding this misappropriation of funds and scandal.
Yeah. So here, number two, the second strategy, or the second point in the strategy these guys had, it's an 8-point strategy. Raise the cost of living until survival becomes a focus, your only your primary focus, basically. We're the second most expensive country in the EU. And we pay 30% more for electricity than the average European. And look, you can see it there. The bills in Ireland remain 61% higher for electricity and 90% higher for gas than they were before December 2020 and the kind of COVID crisis. It's huge. It really is. I mean, that's a huge cost that people are paying that's coming out of people's pockets. The whole push for net zero, that's driven up the cost of fuel and power. And then we've got people, you can't even burn turf anymore now, right? So people who might have relied on that, can't do that. And we're also reducing the amount of agricultural land, because we're rewilding parts of the land in Ireland, right? The whole food production thing is a huge issue. It's a kind of a separate discussion, I guess. But again, it's part of your sovereignty and your security, to have food security within your country, to be able to create and generate all the food that you need within your borders.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be importing it, in my opinion, apart from specialist foods that people are willing to pay a premium on. Now, the other thing at the bottom line here is the transnational agreements on carbon emissions. Again, back to the whole climate change thing. And we're behind, right? So we're behind in terms of our control. So again, you can see the crisis thing here. Oh, we've got to have to accelerate what we're doing because we have to address this. We could end up with fines of anywhere between 8 to 26 billion. Like, that's going to blow away any surplus that we had. We're going to have to fund that out of borrowing if it happens. So why do we sign up to these things? Like, seriously, how have our politicians committed us to things like this that could really bankrupt the country? Because we would very quickly have the highest debt ratio if we have to spend 26 billion because we're not meeting some sort of climate target for carbon emission. We should never have signed up to it. Like, we've created a problem here. And you can see it here. Look at these issues with the people are staying in the family home. It's the second most expensive country in the EU, next to Denmark. It's huge problem. Any young people, you talk to them on the street, and people can't buy houses. They're emigrating as a result. We're losing our own people.
Just pulled some immigration stats, and the amount of our best and brightest leaving is just astonishing. It had in 2024 immigrants by age group for the 12 months to April 2024. There was, between the ages of 15 and 24, there was 24,500. 25 to 44 age group was 33,500. That's the immigration data that I just pulled here from on why young people are leaving. And reasons for why they're leaving were cited as cost of living being the number one. So, I'm a 30-year-old. I have a college degree. I can't get a job in Ireland or afford to rent an apartment. I'm sleeping on my mother's couch. That is not the life that we should want for our future youth in Ireland. What is Ireland doing to bring the diaspora home? In the US, there's a lot of displaced Irish who aren't there legally. Don't know what will happen with them at the moment, but why not motivate them to come back to Ireland to work, give them financial incentives and housing like we do to everyone who's not Irish?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it shows you there's something wrong,
Yeah.
Jana, right? It shows you that there's something out of kilter here, that there's something going on that isn't kosher, right? So let's move on. So defund and destabilize law enforcement. So this is again one of the strategies that these guys have, and we all saw it with the George Floyd thing, defund the police kind of stuff that was going on. And here we are, like the Gardaí are struggling to keep their numbers in Ireland. They can't keep their numbers up, and the view is that they're probably going to shrink actually over the coming year. And we haven't been investing in the navy. We can't patrol our waters anymore. So our actual national security is in detriment here. Our defense forces are, we spend the least on defense. Now, there's a whole discussion about getting involved in the European pacts for militarization and NATO, etc. But that's all getting involved in international conflicts. That's not protecting the country here, our own sovereign borders. And again, people don't care about sovereignty. We want to be part of the global thing, whatever it is, the EU army, etc. So again, this is a problem. So we're not looking after the critical services, the security of our country, and that's a problem. That ultimately can come back to haunt you. Control education and indoctrinate the next generation. So this is one of the primary things you have to do if you want
Hmm.
to subvert a country. And it's absolutely happening here. So page 7 of the NCCA, developing children as resilient and compassionate actors for social justice, climate action, sustainability, and equality. Basically, the whole United Nations agenda, basically. Make sure our kids are indoctrinated in that agenda. uh, you know, and then the whole school approach, as we know, which is the way of indoctrinating in school. So you bring all this stuff, all the SDG indoctrination into every single subject.
Hmm.
It's interesting. I spoke to a primary school teacher yesterday. My brother and I were doing a bit of work, and we ran into a primary school teacher, and he told us. He said this has been going on for years. He said the stuff is going into primary schools. All this SDG indoctrination has been absolutely gone into primary school for years, regardless of the curriculum, and regardless of any parents actually knowing that it's happening. It's kind of an overlay,
Hmm.
right? So you don't parents never got any opportunity to review that this was happening in our schools. It's just happening, and they're getting it in the neck. And it's built into the new primary curriculum, and it's built into the new Ashter curriculum, but it's already happening. In case you didn't know, so kids are getting climate propaganda on a daily basis in their schools today. So this is it. Control indoctrinate kids. It's part of any totalitarian regime, Maoist China, communist Russia, North Korea, any country that wants to have authoritarian, totalitarian control must indoctrinate the children so that they'll accept it.
And a population
So that's
a
happening here.
population that's brainwashed and a population that lacks critical thinking is easy to manipulate and control.
100%. And this is maybe where some of the money is going. These are all the NGOs pushing the agenda in Ireland at the moment. There's a whole load of them. I've only listed some of them here. These are some of the main ones. The Take One program that wants to put it into every class, every subject, every pupil. That's kind of their tagline. You can see them here, right? So these are all pushing SDG indoctrination propaganda, United Nations propaganda into the teachers and into the schools. So they're also indoctrinating the teachers because you have to indoctrinate
Hmm.
the teachers as well. That's a very important part of this process. So we'll move on. And here we go. Ireland's Education for Sustainable Development Strategy. I'm sure we're spending a fortune on this, a small fortune.
Hmm.
And again, I bring back the point that Ronald Reagan had, in the Reagan administration, had an issue with UNESCO, a fundamental issue, and this hostility towards the institutions of a free society. These people want to restrict your free speech. They want to restrict everything about you, indoctrinate your kids. Like that's what these people are, right? So, and UNESCO are basically the education indoctrination wing
Hmm.
of United Nations. and we're quite willing to accept everything that they throw our way. Eliminate private property through regulation, taxation, and debt traps. So, inheritance tax, for example, we can see this happening in the UK in particular, where people ultimately have to sell on their property. It's the usage of vulture funds who can come in and buy all of the property off the page. So basically, Irish people can't get anywhere near buying a new apartment or a new house because it's all bought up in bulk by these vulture funds, who even get tax breaks as part of that. Because they would argue, well, they're putting up the funding initially to do the investment and to build this thing, so you have to give them a tax break. So this is why the property is totally unaffordable in this country,
And in it,
because any new property is being bought up.
and in addition to property
Yeah,
prices
Donna?
being, well, the supply is low because they're being bought up. The prices are high because these globalists control the prices. So there's a supply demand issue. But in addition to that, people like us, who we already have our family homes, they can control the challenges we have to keep our home by increasing property tax. I came across a social media post that said down the line in the next couple of years, they'll increase it to over 2,000. So now it's, 150 or 300 or 400 a year, whatever the value of your house is. But if it goes to thousands a year, and where I come from in America, property tax there could be on a normal house like we have here, 7,000 or 8,000 a year. So you're talking like 700 or 800 extra a month. And if it ever got to where America is 700 or 800 a month extra, we'd have to come up with to pay the tax on the house. So although the government can't really control the house we live in, they can't control, we've already bought it, it's already there. They can control property tax, they can control interest rates for those on a mortgage, to do everything they can to make it that we rely on the government and that we own nothing and be happy, as the WEF wants us to do.
Yeah, and as I say, to put on a tax on inheritance is a classic
Yep.
way of basically taking money or taking property out of private ownership and get the vulture funds being able to come in and pick up that property, because the person has to sell out
Yep.
because to pay the property, the debt duties, etc., that they have to pay, the inheritance tax. And here's the point, one of the bullet points here, this Fine Gael statement, and will show the article that was in Gript, that older people, for example, pushing them, they've got the spare rooms, so you've got spare rooms, we should be letting those spare rooms out to migrants who are coming into the country. And maybe actually the people who live in the house should move into a little granny flat or
Yep.
something, and give the bulk of the house to whoever else is coming in, right? Um, and I've seen those proposals in Canada, which is why it's kind of relevant to Canada.
I think RTE did a piece
Yeah.
recently about the downsizing or right sizing of houses, and they had an ex RTE lady say, "Oh, I downsize, isn't it great?" Yes, you downsize to like a 4-bed in a leafy suburb with a big garden. So that's what they make us think downsizing is. But what they want us to do is downsize into a little flat in a smart city, which will cover smart cities in another piece. But, one rule for them, the elites, but one rule for us, corral us like cattle into a little smart city where there's, little flats and little
Yeah.
prisons we have to live in.
Yep. So here's the constitutional amendment, Jan. I'll just read out the last section here, 3.2. The state accordingly shall delimit
Mm-hmm.
the right to private property where it is necessary to ensure the common good and to vindicate the said right of housing for all residents of Ireland. All residents of Ireland, not citizens of Ireland. Do you notice the
Yep.
wording? So you can see what's happening there, right?
Yep.
That the dilution. So you as a citizen, now it's the same. The person who arrived yesterday from wherever has the same rights as you have.
Yep.
That's the thing that obviously any communist would want to introduce that. That's any humanist or communist would be on the page because they don't agree with national borders and
Yep.
nationality and sovereignty, etc. So that they're the people who want that kind of thing to be brought in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the housing thing, right? So people usually say, "Oh no, that communism is all about property and not having private property." You don't get it,
No.
guys. There's different ways of skinning the cat. Just because the property might be owned by somebody else, like, it doesn't have to be owned by the government. It could be owned by a vulture
Yep.
fund, and that's exactly what's happening in Ireland. And here we go. Promote division through identity politics. So here we go. So this is the whole hate speech
Mhm.
stuff, right? And the education system is riddled at all levels, third level, second level, primary. It's been brought in, so it's all gender orientation, gender identity,
Mhm.
etc. Racial politics been brought in, etc.
Everyone's a
Right,
victim.
it's the way of
That's
doing
the
it. And then,
Marxist playbook. Everyone's oppressed. Everyone's a victim. The only way to get out of oppression is to A, become oppressed yourself, so identify as a transgender, or B, be an ally for that trans identifying person.
an ally.
So it's victim mentality, Marxist oppression. That's the playbook.
Yeah, and migration plays into this because that's part of it,
Yeah.
right? And it fragments the society. And as it says here, these are not neutral goals.
No.
They're designed to divide people, divide a society, so that the society can be easily
Yeah.
controlled.
Yep.
Again, it's back to the control thing. And of course, then they have to set up a whole thing about anybody with oppositional views. You've got all the name calling, you're bigoted, hateful, far right, all the terms that they've conjured up
You
over the
forgot
last
to
while,
add
because we know
you
the
forgot to
transphobic
add
term.
3 that that media called me. I think it was extremists. We were extremist thugs going into
Oh yeah,
libraries to
yeah,
remove porn from the kids sections. We were
yeah, yeah,
terrorists. That came up. And then in the Doll, Hope and Courage Collective, used to be called the Far Right Observatory, one of the directors, Orla, from the director of the National Women's Council of Ireland, went in with my face in the Doll and said, I'm linked to burning down immigration centers, so I'm an arsonist. So we have to add terrorist, extremist, and arsonist to people like me that don't want kids to see porn. Wow.
yeah, yeah. So again, that's all about shutting down the discussion, Jana, and people giving, people then are afraid to say anything because they're terrified
Yeah.
they'll be called a bigot or hateful or far right. Oh God, you'll be called far right.
Mhm.
Oh my God, heaven forbid. I'll be
Yeah.
ostracized by my friends and everything. And you see, that's what it instills in people. That fear. Then they just won't say anything. Then
Yeah,
they'll just
it's
shut up. They don't want to
self-censorship,
talk
and
then
that's the
because
whole
they don't
purpose
want
of the
to.
hate speech bill
Yeah,
that is luckily canceled for now,
yeah,
is self-censorship, dragging people through the process and the fear of being othered, the fear of being labeled or having the, Garda show up at your door, all of those things. So, I think if we could give advice to everyone listening, the one piece of advice I would say is have no fear. If you speak the truth and stand up for the women, children, and families and speak the truth respectfully with evidence, who cares about the nonsensical labels that try to silence you? I'm not scared. I haven't been silenced. I'm a few years at this. I'm still standing, and my children come first before what media wants to call me. So people should really just don't fear the labels. Have no fear.
yeah. No, don't. You're being
Yeah.
manipulated. Basically, people are manipulating you. So don't take that. Don't tolerate that. I never
It's
tolerated
what
that.
bullies do on the
And
playground. A bully goes around and tries to create
correct.
allies to bully that one kid over there so everybody gangs up on them. That's all they're doing on a grand
Yeah.
scale with this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So don't be party to it, I would say to
No.
people. So again, the more fractured the society, the easier it is to
Mhm.
control. That's the kind of message from this. The next one, I know. Well, here we have it in the books, right? It's in the schools, in the school books. Just some examples here.
Mhm.
We've seen them already. We did videos on this. Undermine faith and family, replacing them with loyalty to the state. Now, it's loyalty to the state or loyalty to whatever the kind of supranational agency, which is what we're dealing with today now,
Mhm.
because the notion of loyalty to your country seems to be evaporating,
Mhm.
and it's the loyalty to the United Nations, yeah, to the European Union.
Mhm.
This is where the loyalty is being pushed on kids
Yeah.
now. They're global citizens. You're a global citizen now. You're not an Irish citizen. You're a global
My
citizen,
children
right?
had
So this is what we're
my
seeing.
children in I'll
And
just tell a quick story about global citizenship. I think it was Halloween and they had their Halloween costume show at school. There was a sign in the school on the back of the hall wall, which was probably 30 feet long, that said global citizenship in a primary Catholic school in Ireland, my children's school, global citizenship. So there you go. It's not a conspiracy.
yeah, no, it's been
Yep.
pushed aggressively. So, and of course, we had the whole issue of the faith-based schools, trying to undermine
Mhm.
that and change that. And we saw the vote being defeated at the INTO conference, thankfully. But you'll always see the communists in the Dáil, who go under other names like People Before Profit or whatever. They'll always be looking to attack Christianity and Christian ethos in a school. They'll always be at it.
Mhm.
So don't be surprised. They'll be always putting forward their cases.
Mhm.
And it's been undermined. We've seen the Beacon Alta program, which is again seeking to subvert the ethos in a school by bringing in, Marxist identity politics into the anti-bullying policy. And then the adultification of children, exposing children to things that are inappropriate for them from a sexual perspective,
Mhm.
that kind of adultification. And that, that you're now an agent, like saying to the child, you're an agent of change as well, that to a 5-year-old. That the 5-year-old is now a change agent, right?
Putting the weight of the world on a
Exposing them to
5-year-old's shoulders. 5-year-olds are learning to read and write
yeah,
and learning Irish and,
yeah,
all of those wonderful values and things that great teachers want to teach. They shouldn't be told they're a global citizen and need to be a global change agent at age 5. I mean, that's just, it's insane.
yeah. And again, it's undermining the family. It's basically the children will have different values to their parents. And ultimately, there'll come a stage when you're talking to your kids and you'll wonder, God, what happened? You'll be there one day because, you're so busy at work all the time, you're not able to talk to your children. They're bringing them to school every day. They're getting indoctrinated. And then you'll actually maybe on holidays or something, and you'll find, my God, what am my child is correcting me because I'm not using the pronouns,
Yep.
or that I'm doing something that's going to impact climate change. And like your child is like dictating to you about
Yep.
things,
And it
that
it it drives a
they're playing
wedge
back
between
all the stuff
parent and
they grow.
child. So between your parents have one
Yeah.
set of values, they're being indoctrinated at school on another set, and the parents and children end up arguing that, "No, I'm sorry, but there are only 2 sexes. No, I'm sorry, you're born a boy, you can't be a girl. But they told me that in school. You're very closed-minded, mommy. You're this, you're that." We've heard stories of
Oh,
teenagers telling their parents that they're far right or bigots because their parents say there's only 2 sexes and you're born the way that you should be born.
yeah. Absolutely, Jana. Because the way the United Nations indoctrination is that it's absolute. The children are taught that this is absolute truth. The source of truth is the United Nations, the World Health
Mhm.
Organization. You don't believe anybody else. Everything we tell you, be it on gender, climate change, whatever it
All
is,
true.
GMO foods or vaccines, the only source of truth is the United
Yep,
Nations or the mainstream media, and everything else is a conspiracy theory. It's misinformation,
yep.
disinformation, etc. That's what the children are being taught in
And I
school.
guess there's a side note,
Um,
Eugene, is people ask us, well, how do we bulletproof our kids from this insanity? The first thing is take them out of school, homeschool them, home educate them. I would if I could, but different families, parents have different views on that. And if you can't home educate your children with your own values, when they're in school, you're going to have to constantly be teaching them right from wrong, truth from lie, and telling them, you might hear in school there's multiple genders, but there's only 2 sexes. You might hear that the earth is going to burn up and won't be here. That's not true. So you have to constantly, as a parent, if you don't have the right or ability to take them out of the system, is teach your children constantly your values and reinforce them from a very young age. Otherwise, their minds will be gone. They will be destroyed. They will turn against the parent. And what will their path be like in the future? They won't have any hope for a chance in life.
yeah, I mean the ultimate issue here is they want to remove any form of rational
Yeah.
critical thinking. The critical thinking that everybody needs to have, that just sounds a bit off. The way you hear something on the TV, there's something wrong with
Yeah.
that. I'm going to do some research and going to find out about that because I'm not happy with what I'm being told there. That's the real
Yeah.
critical thinking you need. But kids are being not told to do that. That's the exact opposite. It's suppressing critical
Yeah.
thinking so that the kids aren't even capable of it. So even if you were to go to them and show them the absolute truth, a document or whatever it is, they won't be able to even take that on board.
Mhm. As the rest of the world moves on from this wokery, Ireland will be the last one standing with it, still being, the Japanese soldier fighting the war that ended a long time ago. Our poor children in the schools are going to be so brainwashed when they go to a job interview, they won't have any critical thinking skills, but they can certainly say, well, where are your DEI banners and what's your pronoun, and walk in a job interview and completely make a fool of themselves. And when they go, if they do get a job, they won't have the critical thinking skills. So our children are being set up for failure in the global job market by being dumbed down, brainwashed, and indoctrinated. So, I mean, do parents really want that for their children?
Yep, 100%, Jana. So we've other videos. We do have other videos. We'll put links in the description that talk about this in other different contexts and ways, and the curriculum analysis that we did. So we'll cover that. And one last bullet point I want to put here is there's a group called the National Parents Council, who are so-called the voice of parents now. So we know too well, because we know we've been right at the heart of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
The National Parents Council are a government NGO. They're funded by the government, and they basically do the government's bidding, or the Department of Education's bidding. They're basically just like a propaganda front end for the Department of Education and the NCCA now. And that's all they are.
Yeah.
They're not a parents' representative
No.
group. Parents probably think they are, but they're
No.
not. The last thing here is create a permanent dependence on the state through programmable money. So it's interesting. This particular strategy was created back in the 60s, right? Now it's evolved, obviously. That you can bring it up to current times. Programmable money today means something like a CDBC, the central bank digital currency, or digital euro, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this links into a social credit system and an ID system. Basically bringing in this whole notion of bringing all these things together, because these are the ultimate control mechanisms, where you've got a digital ID, you've got a social credit
Yeah.
system, and you've got this digital currency. And once you've got that, you've got full control of people. You can track everything they spend. You can control what they spend their money on. And basically, that allows you to control where they travel to, because you can restrict, you can create a border that, if you go out of the country, for example, that your currency won't work anymore. You can't use the currency in another country, or you can't use the currency in another part of the
Yep.
country, your
Or
own country.
Eugene, with the
So they can
climate
restrict you.
crisis and the carbon tax, if you bought enough gas for your car, then you can't use that your money to buy gas anymore. You've traveled enough this year, you can't travel, or your social credit score, because you're a far right, is bad, so we're going to just switch you off. Two examples that come to mind is I lived in Ottawa, Canada for work at one point in my life, and my friends in Ottawa were helping feed the truckers who were there protesting at the time. The truckers' bank accounts were shut off. They were switched off. So if you don't
Yeah.
think that your bank account can be switched off if the government doesn't like what you're doing, you're wrong. And look at what happened to Enoch Burke. They seized his bank account and took 40,000 euro out without any warning, or going through the courts. They just took the monies to pay for these unlawful court fees. So this is what we're up against. And not only being tracked, controlled, being switched off, and all of that, but I have two small children who get money in an envelope. All the schools do Carta Kuig, where they put a €5 note in an envelope instead of buying a gift at a child's birthday party. My children have their little piggy banks, and they save that money. And my daughter, I remember one year, saved all of her birthday money, all of her chore money in the year, saved and saved for a whole year, and got €136 when she opened that piggy bank. She bought herself her own scooter. And if we lose cash, we can't pay the babysitter, we can't give our children money in an envelope. They will lose the value of money if it's just a digital tap tap. So it's not just control and tracking and totalitarianism, it's just children also learning the value of money.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So these are the eight things that I guess these guys had looked at. We've looked at how they impact Ireland, and I think we can see that Ireland's not in a good shape.
No.
We're very much in line with
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff, and our country is in a bad way at the
Yep.
moment, in terms of, and you can see that there's the genesis of a polycrisis in Ireland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Housing, migration, the cost of living crisis, energy. you can see how people would be saying, "Oh, there's a polycrisis in Ireland. We need some social transformation to change Ireland to address some of those issues."
Yeah.
To address all of this polycrisis, if I describe it as that, the answer is the SDGs and Agenda 2030, right? That's the kind of we all need to get, if we get in line with that, if we get in line with the climate
Mm-hmm.
thing and adopt all of the policies for Agenda 2030, we'll be good.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. That's what children are being taught. We'll be inclusive. We'll address the sustainable development. We'll address poverty. All these good things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the answer.
Yep.
No, I think we know that's not the answer, but that's what children are being taught is the answer right now.
Yep.
So that's it, Jana. That's the Ireland's polycrisis. The solution to it is Agenda 2030 or Agenda 2050. There's going to be an Agenda 2050
Yeah.
as well. So that's what children have been taught is the answer, and we can see we've serious issues that could be addressed today. We don't need Agenda 2030 to solve most of the problems in this country. If the government had the desire to solve them, they could solve them.
Absolutely. They'll just keep creating crisis. We look back,
Yeah.
there was health crisis, there's bullying crisis, there's,
Yeah.
all the crises, everything. If everyone just thinks for a minute and says, what in Ireland doesn't look right to them? So some people are okay with this issue, but not okay with this. So everyone listening has maybe one thing they're not happy with. Think about the one thing. Who created the problem? Did the people create the problem? No. And back after the banking collapse, when Ireland, we had to bail out all the banks, and the collapse in just after, I think, 2008, Ireland, when the Troika came to town, Ireland, the government signed us up and we absorbed over 50% of all of the European debt. On this little island, we had to pay over 50% of the debt, which means our great, 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 great grandkids will be paying for the government's mistakes. So, I mean, look at every problem happening. Ask yourself, who created it? And then look at the solution they're trying to put in to solve the problem they created. So it's all manufactured. We'll put all the previous podcasts we did over the last couple of weeks, the media, the propaganda, the all the other ones that we've done. And then next time we'll be talking about smart cities, which is just another form of control. It's not living in convenience, it's giving up freedom. So thanks, Eugene, for that. And everyone have a great rest of the summer.